What if someone told you that one of France's most ambitious infrastructure, megaprojects, isn't being built somewhere in Paris, Lyon, or even the rugged Alps, but instead, nearly 9,000 kilometers away, on a tiny volcanic island in the middle of the Indian Ocean? That's not a riddle, that's reality. Welcome to Réunion, a place so remote, so geologically dramatic, and so brutally exposed to the fury of the sea that building anything here is an extraordinary act of human will. Today we're going to take you on a journey to this corner of our planet where engineers are literally racing against nature, budget overruns, legal battles, and the limits of modern technology, all to build a single road, but not just any road. This is the story of the LA Nouvelle Route du Littoral, and it's one of the most fascinating construction stories on Earth. Buckle up. A French island far from France. Here's something that surprises most people. Réunion isn't a territory or colony of France. It is France. According to Article 1 of the Constitution of the Fifth French Republic, France is described as an indivisible republic, meaning every corner of its territory, no matter how distant, carries the same legal and political weight as Paris itself. Réunion sends elected representatives to the French Parliament. Its residents hold French passports. And yes, it is a full member of the European Union. This tiny island sits roughly 800 kilometers east of Madagascar and nearly 9,000 kilometers from the French mainland. It covers just 2,512 square kilometers, yet it is home to over 900,000 people. The island is dominated by two massive ancient volcanoes, and because of this rugged, almost impassable interior, virtually all human settlement, every city, town, and village, has been pushed to the narrow coastal edges. That geography, beautiful as it is, created a crisis hiding in plain sight. The road that was never safe. For decades, the only connection between Réunion's two most important urban centers, Saint-Denis, the island's capital, and La Porte, home to the island's main harbor, was a single stretch of coastal highway known as the Route du Littoral, built in 1959. This road hugs the base of sheer, towering sea cliffs, snaking along the shoreline with barely enough room between the rock face above and the crashing ocean below. On a calm, sunny day, it must have seemed like one of the most scenic drives in the world. But Réunion is not always calm. The Indian Ocean in this region is one of the most cyclone-active zones on the planet. Storms here regularly generate winds exceeding 160 kilometers per hour, and waves powerful enough to sweep across the road entirely. Every year, the cliff face above the highway experienced accelerating erosion, loosening boulders and rock faces that would crash down without warning onto the road and its roughly 80,000 daily users. For drivers on this road, danger wasn't a possibility. It was a daily companion. The tragedy that changed everything. On the 24th of March 2006, the worst fears of engineers and residents became devastating reality. An entire section of the cliff face above the Route du Littoral collapsed without warning. Tons upon tons of rock cascaded down onto the highway below, killing 2 people instantly. It was a tragedy that the island had, in many ways, been dreading for years, and it forced the question that officials could no longer defer. How do you replace a road that is inherently, structurally unsafe? When you're surrounded by the ocean and walled in by volcanoes, the answer would take years of engineering studies, political debate, legal battles, and hundreds of millions of euros just to begin. Engineers first mapped the maximum distance that falling rock could travel from the cliff, establishing a safe perimeter that any new road would need to sit beyond. The conclusion was both clear and daunting. The new road would have to be pushed out to sea. That single decision set in motion one of the most complex construction projects ever attempted on a remote island. The plan and the bridge. The final design, approved in 2011, was audacious by any standard. The new coastal road, the Nouvelle Route du Littoral, would span 12.5 kilometers in total. The western section would be built on a massive dike, an engineered embankment rising up to 17 meters above the sea surface and armored to withstand once-in-a-century storms. But the centerpiece, the section that would define the entire project, was a spectacular sea bridge called the Grande Chaloupe Viaduct, stretching 5.4 kilometers in length and sitting up to 300 meters offshore. This bridge would become the longest in all of France upon completion. It was designed as a box girder bridge, a technique where hollow precast concrete sections are joined together with internal pre-stressed steel cables that hold the structure in powerful compression. The entire bridge rests on 48 specially designed piers, each one shaped to minimize tidal resistance. It is, by any measure, a staggering feat of ocean engineering, and it was built on one of the most wave-battered coastlines in the world. Zurite, the ocean giant, building 48 concrete piers in the open Indian Ocean, required a piece of machinery unlike almost anything else on the planet. Enter Zurite Creole for Octopus, a specialist construction barge the size of a football pitch. Built specifically for this project in Poland, Zurite carried its own concrete mixing facilities and a massive gantry crane capable of lifting pier sections weighing up to 4,500 tons. Each pier consisted of 2 primary components, a 15-meter tall base with a 23-meter wide foundation, and a pier head measuring between 9 and 21 meters depending on its position. The installation process was breathtaking in its precision. Once Zurite sailed the foundation to its target position, The barge extended 8 enormous steel legs directly into the seabed to lock itself in place against currents and swells. Then, with millimeter accuracy, the pier base was lowered to the ocean floor. Hydraulic jacks then raised it 40 centimeters, allowing liquid concrete to be injected beneath the base plate to create a perfect level seal. It took 4 full years from 2013 to 2017 to install all 48 piers. The Grande Chaloupe viaduct was finally complete. Then the real trouble began. When the rocks ran out, the dike sections of the road required an almost unimaginable quantity of rock to build. An initial estimate of 7 million cubic meters of quarried stone needed to form the layered armor system that would protect the structure from the ocean's force. The design was elegant. Massive cast concrete boulders called acropodes formed the outermost defensive layer, absorbing the full impact of waves. Behind them, progressively smaller rocks created a dense, energy-absorbing maze that sapped the remaining power from each swell before it could reach the dike's core. 2 new quarry sites were identified to supply this material at Bois-Blanc and Saint-Lô, but almost immediately, fierce public opposition erupted. Local residents and environmental groups pointed to real, measurable risks: dust clouds affecting children and elderly residents, heavy truck convoys disrupting communities, and most critically, threats to the island's extraordinary ecosystems. Reunion's coastal waters are home to pristine coral reefs, humpback whale migration corridors, and dolphin feeding grounds. In 2018, a court ruled definitively against the quarries, citing the destruction of habitats belonging to several legally protected species. The project lost its primary rock supply overnight, an island that never gives up. What happened next is the kind of problem-solving that makes engineering history. With quarries ruled out, project managers turned to an unexpected source: the farmers of Reunion. For generations, volcanic activity had littered agricultural land across the island with basaltic boulders, a frustrating obstacle for anyone trying to grow crops. An agreement was reached. Farmers would roll these rocks to the roadside, and construction crews would collect and transport them to the building site. Every day, up to 1,000 tons of agricultural rock were redirected into the road's armor system. Farmers cleared land they'd been unable to cultivate for years. The project got its rock, everyone won. But even this ingenious solution couldn't fully close the gap, especially after a 2019 review revealed that the original quantity estimate had been catastrophically wrong. The project didn't need 7 million cubic meters of rock, it needed 12 million. Construction ground to a halt. Sourcing rock from South Africa was explored, but shipping costs over 2,000 kilometers made it financially unworkable, with 800 acropodes later found to be incorrectly installed, and a further 2,500 needing removal and repositioning at a cost of 20 million euros. The project's price tag had exploded to over $2 billion for just 8 of the planned 12.4 kilometers. It had become one of the most expensive roads ever built per kilometer anywhere in the world. The road ahead and why IT matters. In 2022, after years of delays, cost reviews, and political debate, the Reunion Regional Council made a landmark decision. The remaining missing section of the road would be completed not as a dike, but as a continuation of the viaduct, a bridge over the sea. This solution is expected to add a further 700 million euros to the final bill. The specialist barge Zurite, which had been sailed back to Europe after completing the original bridge in 2020, must now be recommissioned for this new phase. Preliminary works began at the end of 2025, with full viaduct construction scheduled to commence in 2027 and a target completion date of 2030. This is more than just a road. It is a testament to what human beings are willing to attempt and endure when the stakes are high enough. Reunion has already shown the world what's possible with projects like the breathtaking Three Basins Viaduct, which winds through the island's volcanic highlands. The Nouvelle Route du Littoral tells us something profound: that building in the most difficult places on Earth doesn't just require engineering brilliance, it requires resilience, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat. The road isn't finished yet, but the story of how far they've come is already extraordinary. And that brings us to the end of today's documentary. We want to know what you think. Does a project like this inspire you, or does the scale of the cost and challenge make you question whether it should have been attempted at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and the conversations there are some of the best on the internet.